everybody, and welcome to the first in this series of lessons and exercises in color matching, color understanding, if you like. What I want to do first is reassure you, because we all know how fickle color is. Those of us who paint know that color can come and go so quickly. So please, during these exercises, don't worry or be concerned about that fact that it can slip out of your hands and come back and so on. What is important in these exercises is the process, that you practice the actions of going through and considering value and saturation and temperature and those things that I am going to explain, and get to understand what they are and how you can make adjustments to them. The result at the end is important enough, but it's not everything. The most important thing is you remember the process that you put into place, and the more you practice that process, the more you will be able to achieve seeing and identifying and matching colors. So that's the thing. What you see in front of you, don't be disheartened if it slips a wee bit, because color will often do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm going to bring up the picture here that we're going to work from for the first, and we're going to work on the theme of greens to begin with, which might be quite nice. Now what I'm doing here, I'm just moving my own picture out of the way a little bit. Obviously, when we look at a picture like this, we can say, oh, there's thousands of different shades of green in there. We know that, and maybe even other colors too. But we're going to keep it very simple, and we're going to break it down into a small number of samples. So you're going to match certain sections of this, and then you can put them together. We can think about putting them together into sort of a landscape, but the most important thing is the matching. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm going to get a little pencil and hopefully show you what I mean. But if we simplify this, so if you look at the screen and hopefully see my little line being drawn there, there's going to be an area, that distant area and way back, that pale distant, the mountains that are way back in those hazy distant, is one area we're going to deal with. The second area is this big top of this big mountain. You can see it has a similarity of color. Yes, if we look closely, there's lots of subtleties, but we're not going to get too into the subtleties just at the moment. There's number two. Number three, if we look on this left side of the area here, you will see a slightly more bluish green compared to some of the others. Then if we were to take the rest of that mid area, this whole area over here, this section here, we'll call that a warmer green. So we'll take one sample out of that area. And finally, of course, the very bottom where we have this, you may not be able to see my little line because it's black, but that area at the very base of a picture, which is a kind of an earthy green, quite a dark earthy green, and that's similar in color. So we'll call that one color. In other words, and as for the sky, we'll treat that as a gray, and we'll put that in. We can worry about that going in later or whatever. The most important thing is that we've selected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas from which we're going to take our little samples. So I'm going to undo, I hope, those lines that we've just seen. Okay, and what I want to do now is just have a look at the way we're going to do this. You're going to have these photographs. You will by now, by the time you're watching this, hopefully. So if I was to take, first of all, and select, hopefully you see a little dotted line happening here, that bit up in that distant, and I'm going to make a copy of that little bit. And now we're going to put it right beside, you see on the right hand side here, there's a little sample there. Okay, so we'll put it aside. It's a little color that we're going to try to look for. Now we'll take this top of the mountain area, and we'll make a copy of that, and we'll bring that over. So you can see I'm taking a little chip out of the 5 areas that I spoke about. So there's the mountain area there. Just move it down a little bit. Then I'll take another section to do with the little piece of the blue or green that we talked about. There it is there. So I'll bring that over down below that one, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, we can actually make all of these bigger possibly, but there's a blue or green in that. Then again, we'll go to the warmer green area that I selected, which is going to be here. And again, we'll bring that over. There's another green. And when you see them side by side like this, you begin to appreciate the variations in the color in a picture. And finally, we'll just take a piece from the bottom, that dark area there it is, going up into the corner. So I'll move that. Sorry, undo that. Beg your pardon. Just need to undo that and do it one more time. Select that. Okay, now hopefully we've got it, and bring that over to the right hand side, and there's our 5 samples of color. Okay, so that's the way we're going to do this. We could, I suppose, I'll see if this works. We could put a line between this. So in other words, sorry, that's just too thick. Much smaller line than that. Just draw a little line from there to represent where that comes from. So there, represent from where that comes from. That one is over there. This one, this yellow one, is down here, of course. And of course, the bottom one is the big darker green at the bottom. So there are the 5 areas of paint and the 5 samples that we're going to attempt to try and achieve with simply red, yellow, blue, and in the case of oils, we'll be using white as well. So that is how we're going to do it, and then we can meld them together and so on. But the most important thing is that you're not overwhelmed by all of these colors. We're actually extracting 5 colors out of the landscape. I'm going to attempt those. So we'll move on then to the next step, where I'm going to explain what we're going to do next. Okay, everyone, we're going to have a go at this first exercise in color mixing, and we're going to be dealing with greens, the theme, if you like, of greens. You'll have seen, I'm just reaching over to get it here, the image that we're working from, which was this landscape, and we talked about that. You see down the right, I've chopped this bit off here, but you can see the samples that I took from the landscape. You can see how I extracted 5 key colors. So there are hundreds, maybe thousands of colors, but we're only going to worry about these 5 at this point in time. And we're going to try and use our methods and think about the steps that we take as we mix a color, not trying hard not to guess and trust the luck and stir until luckily it might click. We're going to try and coldly and clinically ask ourselves what needs done to this color to change it in some way. So I am going to take my courage in both hands and have a go at this. Okay, so here's our samples. We're going to look at this first color, which was a very distant mountain or something. So the first question is, what hue, what would be the key starting point color that I would begin with? In other words, you know, if I was looking at my color wheel, and there's a little color wheel there, where would I place this color in relation to these? And I think, you know, if we were going around the wheel, we would probably agree that we're in the blue end of things. Okay, so we'll say let's begin with blue. Okay, so we have 3 colors here, and that's our other reminder. We're only using 3 colors: ultramarine, lemon yellow, and crimson, and white, beg your pardon, of course, to lighten it, but 3 primary colors plus white. So we have said blue. I'm going to take a little bit of blue there and put it on. We can see already it's exceptionally dark, of course it is. And before we do anything, let's make the first decision. What about the value? the brightness, and we know immediately it's far, far, far too dark. We've got to bring this up to the lightness that we're going to call our target color, okay? So, and this all seems slow and very clinical, but it's the way that you remember it. You'll soon do these things. You'll ask these questions without so much analysis eventually. Let's lift it up. Still too dark. And remember, by the way, the method by which you can do that. If you hold your target color beside your mixing color and half close your eyes, you will see that you can see the line between them, as it were. So that, you know, there's a blur, they don't flow into each other. So therefore, we know that we need to come up considerably. So let's do that. We look at that. We're getting much, much closer. I'm going to take away that because I've put out too much blue. So I want to focus on this so to give us a chance to bring it to the target color. So let's really, really go in with the lighter blue. So we're mixing that. Hold that closer. And now I think if you were to half close your eyes, there'd be not so much of a definition between the two. In other words, you wouldn't see such a great deal of difference. There's a little piece of card. We can actually try this. You know, look at that and that. Still a wee bit too dark, but we can soon fix that. We'll add in some more light. So there we go. So we've got it, I believe, to pretty much a good value, if you like. Now the question is, well, is it particularly, ask yourself, is the target color, that's their target color is this, is it particularly different in temperature? In other words, does it look more green, or does it look you know, more red or whatever? Is it warmer or colder? And sometimes, and what I'm just doing here, I'm just putting another little swatch of that on there, and we'll hold that a bit closer for you. We can see there. So you can see that it's not necessarily green, or it's not necessarily red. So what is it? What it seems to be. So in other words, I don't think we need to necessarily change the temperature. If that looked much greener than that, then yes. If it looked much redder than that, much more purple than that, then yes, we would change it. But what it looks like is grey. It's grayer than my mixing color. So in other words, I don't think I have to play with the temperature, but the saturation is the problem now. In other words, my color that I'm mixing is far too rich. You know, it's the right brightness and all the rest of it, but it's just too blue, whereas that's grey. So all we're going to do now is remove the richness out of it, and we do that with the help of a complementary color. So we've got a very, very pale sort of blue there, and if we look at our color wheel and we look at blue, and we're opposite that is sort of orange. Okay, so I'm going to make up an orange now. Obviously, you know, there's a bit of leeway here because orange can be reddish orange and yellowish orange. So I'm trying to make a sort of a halfway point. You notice I'm not making an awful lot really, because I'm hoping and believe that it probably doesn't need too much. Now, what you notice is very dark compared to my mixed color. So I need to bring it up to the same value, to the same brightness, or closer to it. So you can see it now. That's more akin to the same brightness of what I've got there. I'm actually going to try and take a chance and a wee bit more white. So I've got that rusty, pale, almost flesh color, but it was crimson and lemon made that. And I'm going to add a little bit of that in, not a little bit at a time, you know. Don't work your way slowly to the things, you know. And you will see, I hope, when we look at that, there's the earlier colors working back. Look where we started, how we evolved, and there's where we are now. And what I'll do again, if I can find a little piece of card here, say it's a messy process, but yeah, I'll pull over a wee bit of card here and put a little sample of that on there, and bring up my swatch, my target color, and have a look, you know, how close we are. You know, you may be critical. I may think, well, it's a wee bit dark, so that's okay. We'll lighten it then. So I'm asking the same questions: value, temperature, saturation. What needs adjusted? So let's lift that up a wee bit lighter so we can see. So there's our journey across now, changing slightly more. We'll have another little look at that on our swatch bit of card here. And there it is against our target color, you know, and I'm reasonably happy with that, you know. So I'm going to run with that actually. So the point here is that's how I achieved this. I didn't just instinctively do it. I asked logical questions about the value of paint, about the qualities of paint, which are value, brightness, temperature, warm or cold, and saturation. Is it grayer or richer? Okay, just those simple three things. So let's say we'll try and leave that little area there at the moment actually, and move on to the next color, which is this here. So what I'm going to do, again, make a decision about that. You can see if I come a little bit closer. This is an interesting one. If we were making a starting color, what would it be? I initially thought, well, it could be blue, but equally it's halfway. It's a sort of blue and green, you know, which is natural because landscape color are landscape subjects. So we'll begin there then. It doesn't need to be one simple color. If you think it's bluish green, then start with bluish green. So we'll bit of blue there, bit of yellow, and of course we'll get if we keep it not too much yellow, it'll stay to our blue or green, you can see, but very dark. So let's remember we're looking at the second element there. Look how dark that is. So we need to lighten it up, of course. So let's do that. Bring that up. So we're changing value there. Okay. I think I've gone a wee bit far, but that's okay. You see what I mean? Well, it's not too bad actually. That's second. It's not as bad as I thought actually. Once it's stirred in, so you can hopefully see the second band compared to what I've got there, and I'm actually reasonably happy with that. And you can see again the lightness. You know, maybe just put a wee bit more of the blue and green in, just, or part blue and yellow in, just to take it down slightly. We can always adjust it again later on, but we want to get into the ballpark early on. You can see there what we've got. Now, the question is, and this is where I'll use a piece of card again, is I'm going to put a wee bit of that color I've just mixed and have a good look at that. So look at that compared to what I've got. Two things we notice: the temperature is too cold. The color I've got here is a warmer color. It's more to the green or browny green or whatever, but it's warmer. We know that. So we'll warm it up by adding a little bit of yellow, of course. And the other thing is, while we're talking about it, it is a grayer tone. Look, it's a muddy color, as most colors in nature tend to be. So we maybe need to desaturate it too. But first of all, let's warm it up. So first of all, we'll get a little bit of yellow on the go. And again, yellow is quite a bright tone. There, you see that? So, you know, we don't necessarily need to add lots of white and whatever. So I'm going to just move that slightly more to the greener end of things. Okay, so let's have a wee look. I'll maybe be able to hold it on my palette knife and hold it beside there. You can see what we've got. So we're getting fairly close with that. I'll just confirm it with a, you know, I'm deliberately making these little lessons and exercises quite clinical, because I think if you go through this once, you will get it. So you can see what I mean. You've got that slightly greenier color now. Now let's see if we can grey it ever so slightly. So the complementary color of green is red. Now we've got, you know, maybe a slightly bluey green, which might mean an orange red. So there's blue green, there's red orange, there's green, there's red. So a reddish color with maybe a little bit of yellow in it. Okay, so you can see that we're like what do you call them, like chefs, we have a wee bit of leeway of the spices we put in there. So it's more of a red end of things. So there we go. I'm just using this yellow, a little bit of red in there. So it's a rusty color. Of course, look at it, it's darker than my mixed color. So I need to try and lift it a little bit to come up to similar, a bit more similar, I should say, to the brightness of that one before I make the jump across. So, that's a wee bit better there. Again, a wee bit of leeway, There's a tiny wee bit I'm going in now, and I'm just stirring it in. I'm going to tiny bit by tiny bit. Hopefully you can maybe even see on that, although I'm using this grey palette, which is very useful because the white doesn't distract you. So what I'll do here is I'll just take and do it on a little swatch of card. Again, just put that on the color there and get their second one. Look at what we've got there. So we're getting that grayness. Is it too warm? Maybe it is. Could it be bluer? I think it could be. So let's do that. So we're back to temperature. So we're asking the questions all the time. We're a little bit of blue here, I think might help. Put a wee bit of blue in there and cool this down. And we'll have that on this piece of card. And there we are beside, just do that with my finger actually, there we are beside that one. And we're really getting in there too. So there's color number 2, which we again have kind of achieved by asking the right questions, all right? So we've got 1 and 2 colors. I'm going to clean up a little bit here and we'll look at the next color very shortly. So as if by magic, a few things have been cleaned up here, and if only life was as easy as that, and cleaning up, you could press a button and do it on pause, but it isn't. Anyway, we're moving to the next color. This color here, you can see, and immediately we know we're in the greens this time. We're clearly in the green, and compared to the one beside it, it's a bluer green. So again, we'll start with blue-green. So let's start with a bit of blue here, our yellow, but not too much. So we allow the blue to dominate, and you can see it's very difficult because it's so dark to actually see it. But we will see it once the other colors go in. But what we do know immediately is, of course, if we hold it down to that third strip, it's exceptionally dark. So value needs to be increased. So we get in there now with our white and bring this up, and you can see now how it is quite blue. If anything, there is a little bit of yellow in there. There was anyway, but that's okay. We'll look at that. Look at that again beside our third swatch, our third target color there. If you look at it, you'll see brightness wise, I'm happier with that. In terms of the lightness of it, if we look at that third green, if we have closed our eyes, the two are pretty similar. So we're okay with that. But clearly it's far too blue. That's much greener. So then we add a little bit of yellow into that. Now remember that the yellow is light, so there's a chance that it might bring the tone up overall. So we might need to fix that later on. But let's just put it in. And you can see the difference that's making there. There's the original. There is my latest color. And again, if I just take that on a little piece of card, just a little swatch of that, and have a look at that compared to my third one there. Still too blue, do you see that? Still too cold. So we need to warm it again. And we just get to this point. Could be I've gone too far, that's okay. I'm putting it on this end here, look. Let's have a look at it. See, that's our third one. We're not actually too bad at all, you see that? We're really getting very, very close. Then we've got to ask ourselves at this point, is the color grayer? Is it desaturated? Well, actually, it's difficult to say because it doesn't particularly look much grayer than what I've got on my little swatch here, so I may arguably leave that. In other words, if you think you're close to a match, then maybe let it be. I think I spread that a little bit more. If I put it on a better piece of card, might be more useful. That was a bit wrinkly there. If I do that and hold that now, beside that, you can see what I mean. I am being very fussy here, and I think it needs to be lighter and possibly cooler. You see that? My color is a wee bit dark, so let's be critical here. I know it doesn't matter how much time it takes. Let's see if we can do that. If it's lighter, then it has to be lighter. This is our lesson for today, that we're trying to be critical and accurate. And then this accuracy becomes natural. It seems maybe like a little bit of a labor at the minute, but believe me, once you apply it, you'll feel, much easier about it, and it benefits. So you can see the lightness is better there. I'm happier with that, but I think it's still, for me, slightly too yellow. It could be ever so slightly bluer, but ever so slightly. So I'm going to be very, very careful here. I don't know if you can see the little tip of blue on the end of that palette knife there that I'm just putting in. And you would think that it's barely noticeable, but it might just make that little bit of difference. So I'll just take this piece of card here, put it on, and let's hold it up and see if we're anywhere near. I think that's as far as I can go. I think that's as far as I want to go, because there's a danger that I might overplay it. Okay, so I'm just spreading that. See that there? So again, maybe slightly darker, but I'm going to run with that and put another word there. Look, I'm going to run with that. So I'm going to leave that batch there and move on to the next color. Now you can see our next color, which is the fourth one in our series, if you like. I'll fold that over. It mightn't be a bad idea so you're not distracted. There's the color, our target color this time. Absolutely, clearly, it's green that we're starting with. So, and I suppose we're looking at a warmer green compared to the one we just looked at. This is clearly a yellower green. So we'll try to make a green up in this batch here. I'm trying to make all of the colors side by side. So let's start with yellow. Perhaps that would be the best thing to do. And rather than blue, and then add a tiny bit of blue. It takes so little blue. You can see I barely touched it there, and yet there we are. There is quite an obvious green. Maybe add a wee bit more up, just so we have more of it. So we've got this yellow green. Let's have a look at it compared to what we've got. We've gone too yellow actually. So temperature needs to come down, cool it with some blue. We'll have a look at the value. That's the other thing I didn't do a moment ago, but let's just get our key starting color a wee bit closer here. So there we are there. There we are on my palette knife. You can see, might be better with the swatch, to be honest with you. A little bit on a piece of card there. And we'll hold that to that. So what we do know, we've got a yellow green, but it's far too dark. Okay, so let's lift the tone first. Let's make the value lighter, and then we'll see how we can adjust it after that. So let's get into a little bit of white here. And remember too, with painting, we're not photographers. We're not necessarily making photographic likenesses. So yes, when we're using color, we want it to have a bit of leeway. We don't want to necessarily, be obsessed about it being the right color all the time. But the more we know we can control, the more we have choices. Okay, so I've lightened that color that I made. I'm going to look at it there. So I'm happy about the brightness of it and compared to the other one, but it's now clearly too yellow. It's the temperature's too high. So let's make some blue. Let's bring in the blue. We'll bring it down here just to mix it there first. Tiny little bit. Going to add a little bit of white to it just to bring it up a wee bit closer to the value of that, okay? And again, small amount at a time. You can see how the difference, I hope, between that and that. And all I put on was a minuscule amount of blue. You know, it's better to add your colors in small amounts at a time than plowing them in and then overcooking it and having to go all the way back with another color, and suddenly you have massive amounts of color everywhere and none of them might be what you want. So look, that was what we had, that's what we've got. We're getting much closer there. I think a little bit more blue, tiny little bit more. Move that over a little bit. So now we're still working with temperature. Get another bit of card there. Let's put that on to that. And let's look at that and that. And we're really getting very much closer. Okay. So I'm much happier about that. I'm trying to just catch the light properly there, you know. So we're a wee bit closer. I think a wee bit, maybe a bit too dark. Maybe we could lighten it slightly. So let's do that, you know. And again, that was a tiny amount of white, you know. And sometimes you think, oh, that possibly couldn't possibly make any impact. But with half decent oil paints at all, it's quite amazing, you know. So there we are there, you know. I'm happier with that sort of blend you see there. Maybe a bit cool, maybe a bit blue. So I'm being really super critical here. It's a bit blue. Let's see if we can just lift it one more time. Just one more time. Famous last words, eh? Just one last go. But that's how we get it right. That's how we learn and how we, you know, I used to have an old thing that I stuck up on the wall of the college when I was working there. And it was a quote I heard from someone I met one time and thought it was great. It says, good intentions are not enough. Good intentions are not enough. In other words, it's not enough to say, yeah, you know, I'll do that, I'll do that. You have to do it. You have to implement it. So the intention's not enough. And I'm happier with that color than I was with the previous one. Which I don't know where that is. It's over there. Look, that's a wee bit warmer, you know, a wee bit warmer. And, you know, let's run with that. Okay, so, you know, it's not perfect, but we're really getting fairly close. You know, it's a temperature thing, really, isn't it? Let's just be critical. Good intentions aren't enough, right? And whatever we get here, we're going to run with. Just wipe that off there. Just do that with my finger, it's easier. There we are. Yeah, that's better. I'm happier with that. Okay, I'll stop before I go completely insane and move on to the last color. I think it is, yeah. Now this is an interesting one, this last color, and apologies for all of the finger marks over it, but that's the nature of what we're doing here, you know. But if I can get that fairly close, I don't think you can see it. It's obviously from the landscape, you know that. So it has a greenness to it, and I hope you can see that. But if it does, it's very difficult to say where it is. In other words, from any distance, you would say that's dark grey. You know, if someone's made us have to decide very quickly, we would be saying that's a dark grey. There's no real colour in it. So we know that much. If you ask yourself that, what do we know right away? In other words, it's very desaturated. So that's going to be something we've got to do to this colour. This is not a colour, pure colour, not even like, even vaguely like some of these that we've just made up. This has very little colour obviously in it, but we'd still have to decide where we start. And if you look there, I'm going to start with green again, and I'm going to start with a fairly deep green, bluish green, obviously, because I want a dark, dark color to begin with. So hopefully you can see it working down here, because I like to have these all together. So we're talking blue green, so let's start with blue, of course, and yellow. And what we'll get, I hope, is a very deep green. Now I'm just going to make a bit extra of this, because my hope is that I can put this onto a little picture that we've made. So there is this really deep green. Now let's get a swatch card, a sample card. I confess to being one of those people that in the when you go to airports, it goes around tasting the aftershaves, and I have all of these things that they give you, and then you run out of, you don't know what to do with them. I know I don't. When I'm like 5 in my hand, I don't know, should I give them to the girl behind the counter or find the bin or what. Anyway, there's a confession for you. But look what we've got. Tonally, we're close, obviously, because it's very dark. I might be too dark, so we'll maybe bring it up a hair. So let's just do that before we go any further. But my goodness, I don't want to come up too far, because I know that this is a deep color. But by doing this, we'll maybe get a clearer vision of what type of color we've just made here. And you can see the blueness coming out of it now, because I've added that wee bit of white. It's a bit clearer to see, but give it a good stir around there, put a wee bit of that on. So if we look at that and that, we know that my color is too blue, too cold. So we want to warm it up. We want to go over to the greener end of the spectrum, if you like. So let's put in a little bit of yellow, and certainly the yellow is lighter, so we'll see whether that has an impact. But just add a little bit more, scoop a wee bit more over here. Okay, so now we're making a warmer green, but keeping it dark. Okay, so I'll get a new piece of card, get rid of that. Try this. So that's getting closer to what we want there in terms of greenness. Maybe a wee bit more yellow. But at this point, when we've got to this stage, what we're but what we're thinking about is the saturation that I talked about, because our color is very gray. So let's see if we can make that happen. In other words, once we've got the temperature a wee bit round to the warmer than it was, which I think I'm nearly there actually with that. This is a little bit more yellowy color, but so we've got that, but very dark. But now I want to gray it. So how do we gray that green? Well, complementary of green is red. We've got a fairly mid-green here. In other words, we put about the same blue and yellow in it. So we'll just go ahead and say that the complementary green on the other side of the wheel, you should have your own wheel, hopefully anyway, and we'll add a wee bit of red. The other thing is, what I'm going to do at the moment, I'm not going to add any white into the red, because I think I want to keep that dark tone. But look at how little red I'm putting in there. See on the tip of that palette knife there? So you can see it there, I hope. We'll see it more clearly, but look how that's a bit darker than the bit beside it. And we'll stir that well in. And the red, in a sense, warms it too. When you think about it, it warms it in a way. But let's put that on there. And let's have a look at what we've got. Look at that. I know there's a bit of, but you see, that is really close, I think. Mine is slightly dark. So we'll risk very carefully and very systematically just bring in a little bit of light into it. But I'm talking about the tip of a palette knife worth here. And let's put that on. Let's have a look at that. Look where we're at now.
that still is tight. I think I'm happy with tone. I'm happy with the saturation, but it's still, to me, too on the blue side. I want to move that warmer. I want to almost make that browner. So we lift it with a bit of red. Okay, tiny bit more red in there. And it is a tiny amount, but we'll find that when we see the result. Just get one more piece of card here. Running out of card. And look what we've got. Look how close that is now, you know. We're really, really very close with that colour. And I think I might finish with that. So what we've done here, and it's been a long process, I know, but we've achieved 5 colours that relate to the 5 colours that I sampled on my little landscape. Again, apologies for the fingerprints, but you can see even when we move around there are the similarities. So we've done that, but most of all, we've followed a process. We're practicing a process. It's not the outcome is everything. The outcome is neither here nor there in a way. What's important is asking those questions I've been asking for the last while. What I'm going to do now is stop, and then we'll put these colours on a board in the form of the landscape to get a rough idea of how they might look together. What I'm going to do now is just a little piece of card here that I took, and it's really very small. You can see the size of my hand. It's like a postcard size, and I've drawn onto it the 5 key areas that I took my little color samples from in the earlier part of the video. So what I'm going to do is just occupy them with the colors that I made there earlier. So we'll just begin with this little bit. This was our distant sort of very distant light hills or whatever there, and it, as I say, it's a wee bit like a colouring in exercise at the moment. The second colour was our cooler part of the more distant mountains there. So we'll just work that in. I think I just made enough paint and no more actually for this. But what I want to show you is, put in the colours in context. It's all very well seeing things in little blocks very clinically, but you know, we want to see it as something real. We'll put the sky in. I didn't sample the sky, you might remember that, but I will do. And so the third colour that went in here was over here somewhere. So as I say, there's hundreds of colours, but I'm just blocking them in as 5 key samples. And then, as I remember, the fourth colour was a warmer colour here. This one we made up, slightly more yellowy colour beside that other one. We'll just work that in. And it's just when you see them like this, rather than being boxes. And then obviously there was this lovely dramatic foreground, which is, you remember, we worked hard to get this lovely deep colour, and I'll see if I can, and that was really what gave them, make a little impression of maybe a few rocks and things, you know, but that contrast was a big part of that picture, almost like this dark area framed the bottom of the picture for us, you know. So there are these 5 areas. Now I'll put a bit of a grey in here in the sky, simply because I didn't sample the sky in any way, so I'll mix up a sort of a bluish grey here. Nothing too, just to create a little bit of a sky along there. Look. So the difference is now the palette I'm using is a palette I've constructed. In other words, I made up some colours before making the painting rather than as I went. Now, you know, there's absolutely no reason you can do it either way. It doesn't really matter. But it's interesting when you make up a pre-made palette, you know immediately you're working from much more subtle, more considered atmospheric colours. You can see even in the wee painting, and it only is 5 colours out of the 5,000 that might be there. that we've got a feeling of the atmosphere even in a very simple way there, you know. And as I say, I could start to work this up. I could maybe start to blend the colors and, you know, make little landscape references and turn it into my own little landscape. But what I would like to do is just to show you, I can reach over here, to have a look at the original and how that I have managed to sample colors that are close in reference. You know, that's maybe a wee bit light there, but you know, remember I only sample little fragments of it, bring it over to the other side, and hopefully you can see that where the lines went in the little diagram, target colors where I met them there and where I met these colors. But look at the sort of harmony we have here as well. So I know that that has been a difficult exercise to work through systematically, but have a go with it. Show me what you have done with regards to trying to achieve these colors, and send me your pictures. Make a little picture like this, simply with those 5 colors if you want. You can work it up a wee bit if you want, that's okay. But let me see the results, and I will get back to you with some feedback.